they Hello, welcome to Walk in the Park. My name is Tony Ingraham, and this is May 22nd, 2019. You can see all my episodes online if you want. You can go walkinthepark.tv. And in Ithaca, New York, this is public access television, channel 13. Go to the website and you can see actually the schedule of cablecast. You can also watch it online. This week we are going to go to one of our favorite parks in the Ithaca area, Taughannock Falls State Park. And this is just the other day, no, actually about a week ago, yeah. Walking up to the falls, there's plenty of water on it, it's really nice. And here it is from the overlook yesterday the 21st. So lots of lush leaves around. We've had lots and lots of rain, so it's been great. So let's go up in the air and take a look at the park from the air. So there's Taughannock Point sticking out in the lake, and then coming up from the bottom, that snake-like gray area is the gorge. And up the head of the first part of the gorge is Taughannock Falls. But we're going to go back now over 150 years. We're going to go back to this. I think this is about 1853, and this is a map. There were a couple of maps done of Tompkins County back in the 1800s. 1853, I think the other one was 1866. And this shows it wasn't a park then, but look how they spelt Taughannock. Taughannic. Whereas now it's Taughannock. There have been several different spellings. And then if you look underneath that, you might be able to make out the J.S. Halsey Cataract Hotel. Well, later that became called the Taughannock House. And there was another hotel built on the other side. I'll show you in a couple of minutes. That is the Cataract Hotel, became called the Cataract Hotel. If you walked up the gorge back then, the lip of the gorge, the lip of the waterfall actually projected in a point, unlike what it does today, which is inverted. Let's go back and take a look at what it does today. Look at that. Now it's inverted. That fell off, sometime around 1895. I think it was the winter of 1895, 96, or something like that, close to that. That broke off and left what we have now, which is going to sometime adjust. Well, back then, this is the view from the overlook. You may know the overlook at Taughannock Falls. Most of us do. And actually, the picture that I showed you, the second picture I showed you today, this one is a view from the overlook. It doesn't show the overlook itself, but this is what it looked like back in the 1800s. And a bunch of folks there. And here's another one. This is actually the overlook had a little awning over it. So it was pretty nice. It was pretty much every picture you see of the overlook back then was different because they were made out of wood and they didn't last long. So what was going on there? What was going on there in the 1800s in Taughannock? It was real different than it is now, because what's now the Falls Overlook area and the parking area and the little visitor center that was constructed in the last few years was a big hotel. And actually archaeological work has been done in the parking lot for the hotel. But this is the Taughannock House Hotel. Well, it wasn't that big. And this is a view along a walkway along the side of the hotel. And it was a fancy place. And here's a view towards the overlook. And there was some gazebos and chairs and a little cabin there. And you can see a guide just in front of that little cabin. So it was a luxury, sort of luxury resort. Rustic, kind of rustic, actually. That's kind of rustic with the logs there. But really for people of more than modest means. And this is a more famous photograph at the overlook. But, these people just came from the hotel and the dining room and the bar and so forth. And if you go across the gorge, there was another hotel over there called the Cataract House. I'll show you in a second. But if you look across the gorge here, you can see the Taughannock House Hotel on the left. And on the right, there were some other buildings. There's a number of different buildings there. And this is the Cataract House, which the foundation of which is still in the woods on the south rim of the gorge. And this is a view of the top of the falls from the overlook on the Cataract House side. That house was long gone. Both of them are long gone. The hotel, Taughannock House burned down in 1922, and the Cataract House, I think, came down in the 30s. So you could get access from the Cataract House and probably from the Taughannock House to the gorge itself. And look at this guy exercising his machismo to stand right near the lip of the falls. People still do that today, but there's a good fine for that. And here again is another picture looking across the gorge towards the Taughannock House, being on the left, and then there's some other structures on the right. I don't even know what they are, although I will show you one other building in a few minutes. Okay, how did you get there back in those days? Well, we're going to get on to a story specifically, but here's there's a railroad that went there. Went up from Ithaca, Geneva, and Sayre Railroad, and here's a train you can see on it. There was a railroad station up near the upper end there. There's a railroad. There's a track now that crosses here. Here's a winter picture. Yeah, you can't quite see the top of that, but there is the railroad bridge right at the top of that goes over the gorge. Didn't realize that was so propped up there. But the railroad grade has been turned into a bike hike trail, the Black Diamond Trail, named after the last train used to go on that route back, I think, maybe until the 1960s. I'm not sure, 50s or 60s. And you can also take a steamboat or steamboat service on Cayuga Lake, come up from Ithaca or come down from the other end, the north end of the lake, and stay at the Taughannock House and take a carriage to the hotels. So you take a carriage from either the steamboat dock or from the train station and go there. So, okay, so let's. I'm going to take a look at something that was going on back in the 1860s in central New York, which kind of got copied here. This is a story. We're going to go up to just near Syracuse, and this is some text off of Wikipedia, but there is a large object being lifted out of the ground here in a place called Cardiff. And the Cardiff Giant was one of the most famous hoaxes in American history. It was a 10-foot tall, purported, quote, petrified man uncovered on October 16th, 1869 by workers digging a well behind the barn of William C. Newell in Cardiff, New York. Like I said, near Syracuse. So both it and an unauthorized copy made by P.T. Barnum is still being displayed. The original is currently on display at the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown, New York, which I have seen years ago. So the Cardiff Giant, there he was there. Definitely a guy, as you can tell from the anatomical detail. So the guy Hull hired men to quarry out a 10-foot, 4.5 inch long block of gypsum in Fort Dodge, Iowa, telling them it was intended for a monument to Abraham Lincoln in New York. He shipped the block to Chicago, where he hired Edward Burghardt, a German stonecutter, to carve it into the likeness of a man and swore him to secrecy. That's it. Various stains and acids were used to make the giant appear to be old and weathered, and the giant's surface was beaten with steel knitting needles embedded in a board to simulate pores. So let's go down to the next one here in a sec here. Let's see. Okay. And the next one. All right. So, all right. What do they say about this one? Well, let's see. Newell, okay. Newell set up a tent over the giant and charged 25 cents for people who wanted to see it. 2 days later, he increased the price to 50 cents. Not a lot of money back then. People came by the wagon load. Archaeological scholars pronounced the giant a fake, and some geologists even noticed that there was no good reason to try to dig a well in the exact spot the giant had been found. Yale paleontologist Othniel C. Marsh termed it a most decided humbug. Some theologians and preachers, however, defended its authenticity. So anyway, it was for a while thought to be a real petrified man, and this was back in the times when people thought the world was 6,000 years old, despite the subsequent mass evidence that has come to the contrary. Although I have met people who still think the world is 6,000 years old, but that's another story. So the Cardiff Giant, here it is at the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown. So as it says, well, this says it offered $150,000 for the giant, and P.T. Barnum made a copy of it. I'll get back to my normal thing here. Made a copy of the Cardiff Giant, and then there was a lawsuit back and forth as to which one was the original. And the judge said, "Well, why don't you let the giant come forth and tell us who's the original, because they're both fakes." So that was pretty funny. So anyway, 10 years later, John Thompson, who was the operator of the hotel, wanted to stimulate business, and of course there'd been a big buzz about the Cardiff Giant. That was known really all over the country and even maybe in other countries and internationally. But some time had passed, so he figured he would do various stunts to try to bring people to Taughannock Falls. Here's one he did. I think this was 1877, if memory serves me. Professor, quote unquote, Professor Jenkins from Canada set up a 1,200-foot long tightrope across the gorge, and you could watch this event. I guess it was a windy day. It was let's see, 50 cents to sit and 25 cents to stand to watch this. So this was one of the publicity stunts, things that was done to bring visitors. So okay, we're going to go to another building here. But in 1879, a couple of years later, he did something else, and he was building a road over near this building, which no longer exists. In fact, none of the buildings exist, called the Annex, and he was to head up towards the upper gorge. And they actually had trails down into the gorge from either side, but that's another story. And so some workmen were digging this road, this dirt road through the woods. And here's a picture taken. The summer of 1879 in Trumansburg was probably lazing along like most other years until 2 mornings before the 4th of July. On that day, workers engaged in winding road near the entrance to the glen on the north side of the ravine struck something hard with a shovel. And so here it is. The workers shown may or may not have been involved in the hoax. It's a hoax. One of the pictures taken by Trumansburg photographer W.L. Hall. So this was July 2nd, 1879. So what was going on here? Well, we'll see here. What do we have here? That copy, by the way, I just read you, is by Sandy List, who is the town of Ulysses historian, and she allowed me to copy stuff from the Ulysses Historical Society newsletter, which he sent me a copy of. So I'm going to read some of the things in some of these pictures here because she is such a good writer and better than I. So anyway, so let's go on. What is this one? What the copy that she wrote for this one is? Okay. Let's see. Got past myself here. This is what I wanted to show you. At first they thought it might be a chunk of iron ore, but as they gradually cleared away the earth, they found, quote, a human figure lying on its back, its arms extended nearly straight and the legs crossed at the ankles. This was the report of a newsman with the Trumansburg Sentinel, who proceeded to describe the figure in detail, but to withhold judgment on his composition, origin, or his journey to that spot. He did declare, it is there and we have seen it, and our readers can form their own conclusions upon investigation. So that's what was written at the time in the Trumansburg, what is that? Yeah, Trumansburg Sentinel, newspaper in Trumansburg. I guess it was weekly or something. So, okay, let's go on. Here's from an article in Life in the Finger Lakes magazine, very nice magazine. Article in 2003. The news spread like wildfire, and it was not long before hundreds of spectators were flocking to the scene. Exploitation of the petrified giant naturally fell to John Thompson, upon whose land it had been found. Thompson had photographs taken, and the photographers enjoyed a period of prosperity as people bought the pictures as fast as they could be made. So this is a lot of money here. Let's see what's going on here. Let's continues in that article. Cornell University and other scientists visited the spot and at Thompson's invitation chipped off small fragments for study. After analyzing these bits of the body, the scientists proclaimed that without a doubt here was an authentic petrification of a human being of an extinct prehistoric race. For months, Trumansburg and vicinity became the mecca of thousands of tourists, and the fame of the Taughannock Giant spread far and wide. Then came the startling revelation. You know, they call this the giant, but by those standards of that time, I would be a giant because it was only about 6 feet 2 inches, 6 feet 3 inches, a disputed question there, tall. So, but they some people were calling it 7 feet tall. Well, it wasn't 7 feet tall, I don't think, from all the reading I've done. Okay, so let's go to another one here. It wasn't before one of the it wasn't long before one of the instigators, geez, Trumansburger Frank Creek, Creque, I guess that's for Creek, his tongue loosened in a Trumansburg tavern, revealed that the stone man uncovered on Thompson's property was also a fake, like the Cardiff Giant. According to Creek, the scheme was hatched to attract attention to Thompson's hotel. Okay, well, let's go on to the next here. Thompson approached Ira Dean. Now, that's him on the right there. This photograph was kindly supplied to me by Sandy List, Ulysses village historian. Ira Dean, a Trumansburg mechanic and engineer in Trumansburg Fire Department, a mechanic and engineer in Trumansburg Fire Department, who, after studying some chemistry to learn the ingredients of the human body, mixed a thick batter of eggs, beef blood, iron filings, and cement. He molded the material into his conception of the resemblance of a prehistoric man and baked it to hardness in a huge oven. Might have been in the hotel. I read that maybe the oven was in the hotel. So then late at night, Thompson and Creek took the 800-pound object to the scene of its discovery. Rather than dig straight down, they tunneled in from the side and pushed the stone man through the hole to its resting place. A tree root which protruded into the cavity was wrapped around the neck so it would look as if it had grown there. The idea was that the earth above would look undisturbed, and it worked. Some of the most convincing evidence of the giant's authenticity was the fact that the sod over the body, quote, had not been disturbed for 1,000 years. So, let's see, what do we got going next here? If I get any other copy here. Oh, it's just going back to the, oh, there we go. So, so that was the Taughannock Giant, 1879, and so that went on for a while, and a bunch of people came, a number of scientists and others kind of staked their reputation on saying it was authentic. And actually, Ira Dean had researched very carefully all the materials, and he was very meticulous about the anatomy and so forth, that it really did fool a lot of people. And they did chemical analyses and found, signs of blood and other things that you might find in a petrified person. So, okay, so there's been kind of a revival. So let's go to, we're going to go to the Tompkins Center for History and Culture, which is the new location of what was the History Center of Tompkins County, has now moved to the former location of the Tompkins Trust Company, which moved around the corner from Bank Alley on Tioga Street next to the Commons onto Seneca Street. And so anyway, they've occupied that place, and it's pretty interesting. You can actually see there they have the Tommy plane, which you may have heard about, is in there now. A lot of exhibits, and then there's offices for various community organizations. So for some time, Ithaca's History Center, I'm reading actually from more of Sandy List's articles in the Ulysses Historical Society newsletter. For some time, the Ithaca's History Center, about 25 years in the former Dean of Ithaca Moving and Storage Building at the foot of East Hill, has been working to reestablish itself at the new Tompkins Center for History and Culture in the former Tompkins Trust Company, located in Bank Alley. That's what I already just told you. To add interest to the chaos inherent in such a big move, center staff, led by Director Rod Howe, applied for and received a tourism grant to develop a March-April event, likely to be annual, that would capture Ithaca's unique interweaving of science, wonder, imagination, and culture. Okay, so what they did for this year, the theme determined for 2019's event was what is our next Taughannock Giant? Well, let's see, what do we have here? Just pictures. Okay, so here's a picture of, this is in a shop in Mecklenburg, actually. That's the article there from the Finger Lakes Times that I was quoting from. And this is Anne Marie Zwack, who is an artist, sculptor and artist, and she teamed up with with this grant from the History Center with this gentleman, looking from the back, who is Duran Van Doren. Many people know him. He is a blacksmith, but he's an artist. He's an artist. He's a sculptor, and he does many amazing pieces of ironwork. If you go up the Cascadilla Gorge, go up the Cascadilla Gorge and go into the lower entrance downtown, the big gate there was made by him, and many other structures around, particularly around Cornell Botanical Gardens, were constructed by Duran Van Doren. And I've known him for a long time. I don't know him really closely, but he used to do things in the parks for us years ago. So there we are in his shop with Anne Marie in the back, and another picture, and they are working on the giant structure. They're going to reconstruct the Taughannock Giant. So that was done in 1879. Well, there is a 2019 version of it. 1879, 29, how many years is that? I don't know. It's about 140 years. Yeah, so, get that right? I don't know. Okay. With the Giant as a jumping off point, the History Center presented a 2-day, 3-part program March 29 to 30 this year, including a panel discussion, hands-on family activities, and more. They also commissioned a full-size giant recreation by artist Anne-Marie Zwack in collaboration with Trumansburg artist blacksmith Duran Van Doren, who created a metal skeleton for the figure. I think that was also done for the original. I think Ira Dean made a metal skeleton for the original. So nobody knows what happened to the original. It broke up when it was moved. I don't know. The different things happened to it. It was in maybe Ira Dean's basement. Then it was said to maybe it was dumped in the lake. Maybe it was buried in an orchard. But no one has found anything since. So see, where are we going here? Here's another working on it there. Or working on the skeleton in Duran Van Doren's shop. So, okay. Some more. What do we got here? Oh, I screwed up this one. Let's see. Anyway, Zwack and Van Doren's man is made of steel bars and mesh. And concrete. At nearly 7 feet, he's a little taller than the real giant 6'1", but he weighs something close to the original 700 to 800 pounds and was built to endure the elements, to live outside in the Finger Lakes weather. So I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't have that much more to read here, I guess. A couple more. No, 3 more. Okay, so let's move down. There they are, working on still on the skeleton of the giant. Let's see here. Here they are. Anne-Marie, Duran Van Doren. Here they are, the skeletons coming together. There's a lot of different images here. Here's a selfie that Anne-Marie did. Most of these pictures, actually most of these pictures now in the shop I got from Sandy List, the Trumansburg Village historian, who wrote the articles that I've been reading from in the Ulysses Historical Society newsletter. So now it's taking shape. Different parts of the skeleton. Look at that. Arms and legs are coming together. Oh, wow. That's Tio Aceto on the left there, who is assisting in the project. And now the fully constructed skeleton of the modern Taughannock Giant. So here it is inside. Then wire mesh was put over the whole thing, so that then concrete and whatever plaster, whatever it is she did, went on it. And finally it was moved to Anne-Marie's shop. Maybe that's Anne-Marie's shop. In any case, it was moved there. And she put on the external. So let's see what it says. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Zach spent a few days at Duran's Forge in Mecklenburg working with, well, let's get back up here. Yeah, there we go. Working with Van Doren and his helper, Tio Aceto. Hopefully I pronounced his name, T-E-O. Van Dorn says, recreating the Giant was one of those dream jobs. I've been interested in the story for a long time, and I like promoting our local history and individual character. Okay, so let's go down to here. Once the framework for the figure was finished, the Giant was transferred to Taughannock Studio so she could sculpt his form in concrete. Aiming for some organic composition, the original, constructed by Trumansburg mechanic blacksmith Ira incorporated cement as well as dry sand from a grindstone, iron reamings, beef blood, whites of eggs, and sal ammoniac, phosphorus, acids, and plaster of Paris. Swack laughed and said she'd used none of these. Okay, so the photos here, let's see. There we go, there's more work. The photos here show a series of steps in the construction of the new Taughannock Giant. To date, his final resting place is yet to be announced, but at present he reposes behind glass in a tiny garden courtyard. Tiny garden. Well, let me get back to my normal view here. Tiny garden courtyard at the rear of the new Center for History and Culture. All right, so here it is. This was, oh my gosh, yeah, the end of March, late March, 30th, 31st, something like that. I said it earlier. So here lay the new Giant in the courtyard, the little tiny courtyard in the Tompkins Center for History and Culture. And Anne-Marie reveals it. I actually was there and took these pictures. He unveils the new Giant, the complete new Giant. So there we go. Different views of the Giant. So that Giant, different views of him. There he is. I guess it's a him. The Cardiff Giant did have male anatomy visible, so they could determine that, but none here. We can't be sure that it was a guy. So anyway, that is the new Giant, and so they're going to figure out some place to put it outside. Haven't decided that yet. Maybe they have by now. I haven't found out, but in 1988, some kids from Trumansburg, during something called State Park Week, made a Giant out of paper mache and I don't know what else. Maybe, I don't know, it seemed like sawdust or something. And I took this picture back in July of 1988. So I think I might recognize one or two people there, but I'm not going to say because I'm not sure. But in any case, that didn't last long. But it was on display in the bathhouse at Taughannock Falls back then, almost 30 years ago. Well, 31 years ago, as a matter of fact, almost. So that's our story of the Taughannock Giant. And thank you for joining me. And I recommend that sometime soon you get out for a walk in the park in this beautiful spring weather. Now I got to say goodbye with our final goodbye credits video here. So coming right up is where we go. Thank you for joining me. Is a